Holy Happy Hour, Batman. I'm Father Ben. I'm an Episcopal priest, gamer, streamer, podcast host, and co-founder of the All Ports Open Network. On this show, I'm joined by heroes of the gaming and geek world to talk about life, faith, spirituality, and whatever else comes up. So today on the show, I'm very excited because we're going to be joined by my guest, the self-stylized Geek Preacher, Derek White, to talk about his long time in the tabletop role-playing game community and the con scene and ministry to folks in the gaming space. And I'm really excited about that. But before we get to him, a couple things. First, I wanted to share a quick housekeeping note. We're going to be off the show for the next 2 Fridays for family reasons. But after that, I'm excited because I am going to be coming back with a vengeance. Plan, please, to join me on Friday, May 28th, when I will be joined by James D'Amato, the founder of the One Shot Network and the host of One Shot and Campaign Podcast. We've got some really exciting stuff we're going to be talking about. So you're not going to want to miss James D'Amato here on the show on May 28th. But before we continue on, it is happy hour. And so I'm planning each week to start out by sharing a cocktail recipe themed around my guest. So today I'm featuring a cocktail. I'm going to bring it up here on the screen for you. And this cocktail I'm calling the Not So Fire and Brimstone. So see if you can see it there on the screen. Hopefully you can read it. I'll share it on Twitter after the fact, maybe on Facebook too, if I remember to do that. But you can check that out. It's so the drink is a little bit spicy. I used a local Philadelphia jalapeno infused gin from the gin specialists at Revivalist Spirits, which honestly, if you live in the Philadelphia area, or I'm sorry, Pennsylvania at all, I believe, you can get it. It's super good. And it's from Revivalist Spirits. Really awesome. Highly recommend sticking a bottle of that in your freezer for the warm months of the year. Or for the colder months of the year, just leave it out and let it sort of warm you up. It's really, honestly, very, very good. But this is basically a lemonade type recipe. So you muddle mint and lime, simple syrup, fresh lemon. Sorry, I meant mint and lemon. Simple syrup, fresh lemon juice, the jalapeno gin. You can also do a quick version of this one where you just combine that awesome spicy gin with some lemonade. Just some lemonade, and maybe throw some mint in there if you like, or some fresh sliced up fruit or something. It's extremely refreshing. I've got one right here. Definitely no fire and brimstone cocktail, that's for sure. So happy hour. Cheers to everybody. Really glad that you're here with me. And speaking of being glad that you're here with me, by the power of the internet, let's get rid of the recipe card and let's bring on our guest. So joining me here on Holy Happy Hour Batman this week, it's our guest, Derek White. Derek, welcome to the show. How are you? Oh, I can't hear you for some reason. Oh, no. Are you muted?
I'm doing good.
Ah, there you go. Hey.
That was me. I had myself muted.
Well.
Doing great, Father Benjamin. Do you want Father Benjamin, Father Ben? What do you like?
You know what? Ben is honestly great. Ben is great. Ben, and how about same thing question for you? Derek,
GP, hey, you. I'm the youngest in my family, so it was like, I know your name. I will get you. You live here, So, yeah, Derek is fine.
Can I just say, I think of all the guests we've had on the show so far, you definitely have the cool shirt going on. I love
Yeah, I have another one like this with dragons on it and a castle. I've got another one coming in that matches. I got 2 of them that match, one for me and one for my son, with a bunch of dragons flying around. So I love stuff like this. Yes, this is a Gary Con staple. Is they have Hawaiian Shirt Day every year at Gary Con. So we put on Hawaiian shirts and things of that nature.
There's a Hawaiian Shirt Day at Gary Con?
Oh, yes. Gary Gygax used to love to wear Hawaiian shirts.
I feel like it's like my tribe that I've only half known that like for a long time, not ever been there. But when I finally do, it's going to be like what has been missing in my life here.
I call Gary Con a pilgrimage. It is a pilgrimage. It is the geek gamer Mecca. It is our Jerusalem. When we gather together, I equate it to a spiritual experience and a family reunion, all rolled into one.
Yeah, so if folks watched the show last week, they heard a lot about Gary Con because last week we had our guest Michael Mornard on the show, and we talked about Gary Con quite a bit. But you and Michael happen to know each other pretty well.
Yeah, Michael and I met at GaryCon a number of years back. Someone there, a mutual friend, I think her name was Wendy. She said, "Hey, Derek, I need you two guys to meet. Michael is really great. He went to an Episcopal seminary. His wife's an Episcopal priest. I really want you two guys to meet." And Michael and I met, and we hit it off wonderfully. He assisted me one year as a chaplain at GaryCon. Some of the things I do is I'll hold an ecumenical worship service there, and that I had taken part in some of those at Gen Con in the past, but I did that at GaryCon. The first year GaryCon had fallen on a Palm Sunday.
Okay.
And
wow.
I told people, I said, I may not be able to get away because I'm a full-time United Methodist minister. I don't think I can get away. And they said, well, what about us? Maybe we need a Palm Sunday service while we're there. And so I went to my church board. I talked to them about it. They said, yes, Pastor, that's wonderful. You do that. And
Wow.
Michael, we offer Eucharist when we do that. So Michael assisted me with that. It was really great to see two big, fat, honking gamers up there in the middle of the bar area. Well, it was a restaurant, but it's where everybody went to drink.
Sure.
And we were sitting, we held a service. Someone brought palms for Palm Sunday. So we had fresh palm fronds there. It was just one of the most beautiful, fun experiences, and it was really great. Had a blast.
That is really cool. I was just thinking very Jesus-y, having it like in the food and bar area, where people are hanging out to eat and drink.
Yes. Gamers love to eat and drink. And Jesus was accused of being a glutton and a drunkard.
Right, exactly.
My kind of guy.
That's really cool. So so you said being a chaplain at GaryCon, which can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I didn't, like you said, there was ecumenical services at Gen Con, and I've actually never been to either one, although I sort of by the power of the internet experienced content from both of them. But I did not know there were that kind of thing going on, which is really cool.
Yeah, actually, this has been going on for a very long time. I became a part of the Christian Gamers Guild in the 1990s. And what it was just an email list. It wasn't even a message board. This is before people used message boards online. And I became a part of that and got to know people. And a number of them were gamers. We were just looking for a place of mutual support because, as you know, gamers and geeks have not always been looked upon very nicely by the church. And so if you're in the church, you're kind of looking for a support group. And that's what we were. And as that developed, people began to meet up at gaming conventions. And one of the people that's been a part of the Christian Gamers Guild almost as long as I have, his name is Dave Mattingly, and Dave began setting up ecumenical worship services at Gen Con. He also does that at Origins as well. And so he started setting up those services because most gaming conventions end on a Sunday, and sometimes you're not able to get to church if that's your bag. If it's not your bag, cool, go do what you'd like to do. So Dave would set those up. And when I started going to Gen Con, because I am a minister, I'm seminary graduate, did some doctoral work, things like that, Dave invited me to come preach. And so I would preach and speak at the services at Gen Con. And then after Gary passed away, I was invited by a friend of mine in the gaming industry to come up to what they refer to as GaryCon 1. It was the first GaryCon held in honor of Gary Gygax. And I just started coming, and I just kind of fell into it because people in the gaming community already knew me. I'd been around for a while. I already knew Luke Gygax, Gary, one of Gary's sons. I knew some of the family. I knew some of the people that worked for the hobby in the 80s just because I'd connected with them at conventions. And honestly, I connected with them because initially it was a novelty to see a minister walking around gaming conventions that wasn't going, repent, you're going to go to hell, who was instead saying, hey, would you like me to bless your dice for you? Or, hey, can I join this game and play? That was unusual initially. And so they knew me, knew who I was, knew what I did. And so I just started volunteering, helping out with GaryCon. And a number of years ago, Luke came to me and he said, hey, Derek, would you mind being our chaplain? Now, Luke's a military person, so Luke understands the need for chaplaincy work. So part of what I do as a chaplain is I help with hospitality. We set up a memorial table every year for people in the industry who have passed away.
Oh, that's amazing.
We've even added to the table so that people can write the names of their friends who have passed away. And I even perform weddings, which I've done at GaryCon.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's wonderful. I've done a few geek weddings over the course of my ministry. Had someone come up to me one year, had his little girl in his arms. She was maybe 2 years old, asked me if I could bless his daughter, things like that. I've given out dice blessings. One year, GaryCon started on Ash Wednesday. I did imposition of ashes because, our faith should be a traveling faith.
Sure.
And so we want to be there to provide religious services for those who want them. And if people aren't interested, that's perfectly fine. Or if they're of another faith, for example, I've met rabbis, I've met pagans, witches, others, and they're all friends of mine because we all love each other. And so if somebody's in need of something from one of them, they find themselves in a difficult spot, I send them their way. There's even some counseling going on. I mean, I was at a convention one year and there was a person there. I'd known him for a number of years. One of his in-laws passed away and he was having to leave early. And so he asked me, I saw him, I counseled with him and his spouse for a while and prayed with them, because as you know, you're a clergy person, you understand that, ministry is much more than just standing in a pulpit and preaching a sermon or offering the Eucharist. It's being there when people just need someone to talk to. And in my tradition, we don't have that tradition of confession, which is sad because all confession really is an opportunity to talk to another human being who understands the pain and difficulties you're going through. And that's what I end up being. I mean, honestly, that's why my hashtag on TikTok is real life cleric, because the cleric in the party gets to heal all the scrapes and cuts and things like that. And that's part of what I try and do.
Yeah. Well, there you go. If people are watching, they can find you on TikTok. I need to find you on TikTok and check out some of your TikToks. But
Lord have mercy on your soul. My TikTok.
So that's all really amazing. I just am so interested in all of that stuff, and it makes me want to do more of it myself. Like, I mean, I've definitely seen that kind of a need. I'll say that, like, it's funny. I've been having so many conversations lately, partially because of doing this stream, but just in general with other people. Like, I was talking to some people who are going to be on the show in June who are actually Jewish, and they are creating Jewish games. And we were talking about how there has been in some versions of sort of geeky media, like in a sort of Star Trek, vision of the future where there's like this religionless future or absence of religion or whatever. But the reality is that the gaming space, right? Like it's this place where people and lots of people come together. They find a lot of shared identity and a lot of meaning making going on there, but they're just like together as part of, like, for a lot of time too. For some people, especially who are really big enthusiasts and hobbyists, it might be tons and tons of time. And the reality is when you're in community for a long time, right? Like, human beings are spiritual. Human beings are, religion is a part of being human. And I don't think we can be human without it. And so, like, it would be unnatural to me that you wouldn't have those spiritual needs, that you wouldn't have those pastoral needs, that you wouldn't have even the religious presence. The fact that there is very encouraging to me. And And so sometimes I have been, yeah. I don't know if you see that in the chat. We'll cover that in a moment. I want to bring that question from the chat into the conversation. A certain former guest of the show is in the chat, but yeah, I don't know what I'm saying except for the fact that it's awesome and I'm encouraged by it.
Yeah. I see the comment there. Yeah.
So Michael says, "What's the tattoo?" Someone named Michael Bernard in the chat.
Which one you want, Michael? So
what do you got?
Okay, this is a dragon ampersand.
Okay.
I got this. I believe it was the 40th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons. My daughter helped design it. So that is a dragon ampersand. On this wrist is the Greek word ekinosis, which means self-emptying, where Jesus emptied himself of all authority and power. And then Michael will really like this one, so will you. This is one of the oldest Anglo-Saxon crosses ever found there. And then, of course, we have the Green Lantern tattoo, because I tell people that's the first liturgy I ever learned. In brightest day, in blackest night, evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light.
There you go. That's all. That's awesome.
You got ink up and down my arms. It's all. Sure. I've got some more theological themes on my shoulders. Sure. So yeah.
So let me ask you then. I was a question I was wondering about, which was like for you, which sort of came. I sometimes like to ask a chicken and egg question with this, but sometimes they're the same. Which is like, did geek come first? Did God come first? Like, which of those things came first in your own life experience, or were they?
Being a geek led me to God.
Really?
I did not grow up in a church-going home. I did not grow up in church. I tell people that I was raised culturally Christian. Yeah. We occasionally went to church, and when we went to church, the only services I ever remember going to were probably an Easter service, because what did Christmas have to do with religion? It was about Santa. It was about presents.
Right.
I didn't grow up hearing about Advent or any of those things I do now. But I tell people being a geek led me to faith, because the geek life is all about stories. The geek life is all about weaving good stories. And so even as a very young child, I was reading A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. Oh, wait, she was a Christian. I didn't know that until I was an adult. I read Narnia. Oh, wow, that was written by C.S. Lewis, a Christian. Oh, I didn't know that until I was an adult. Yeah. Oh, I read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, written by J.R.R. Tolkien. Another Christian. Oh my goodness, I had no freaking idea until I was an adult. But even before I found out about that, I was on a journey of faith, because the faith journey is about a journey from darkness to light. It is about a journey. It is the hero's journey. It is a journey of where you've gone through difficult things. You know, I tell people, if you're already strong and you have everything put together, you don't need faith. You're cool, man. I needed faith. It was about a journey where, you know, I had difficulties in my life. I had despair. And it was these heroic stories that said, you know what, there's a way out of this trouble. There is a way out of this. And so when I heard the stories of faith, I heard stories of forgiveness, those resonated with who I am as a person. And so the geek definitely came first, because I read comic books before I ever read a Bible. So, you know, that's just who I am as a person. And for other people, it's different. But I heard you and Michael chatting. I mean, Christians are some of the biggest geeks ever, man. Have you ever been to a Bible trivia contest? Oh my Lord, they are dangerous. They're downright mean over who has the best Bible trivia, and they will fight you for an answer. They're like the nerdy kid in the back room going, "Oh, I got the answer."
Sure.
Oh, me.
I grew up in a church tradition that did a thing as a kid we called sword drills. Have you ever heard of this? Yeah, so for
mercy on your soul.
Yeah, exactly. So for people who have no idea what I'm talking about, it's basically you take a Bible and you hold it up in the air, and you have to hold it by the spine of the Bible so that you can't cheat by having your finger in it, and you hold it up in the air, and then somebody will call out a verse in the Bible, and you have to, everyone quick, starts searching for it. They say go, and then the first person that finds it stands up and says it. It's like talk about a geeky activity. That also I have a lot of weird mixed feelings. I have a lot of flashbacks.
Well, let me tell you the really geeky way that I dealt with sword drills, because this is funny. Because I came to the faith as an adult, so the idea, everybody had these memory devices and these mnemonics on how you remembered it. So my wife, who did grow up in church, she told me she remembered the order of some books in the Bible: Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians by General Electric Power Company, right? That's how she remembered it, using a mnemonic device, perfectly fine. Me coming to the faith as an adult, I was like, okay, this is the Pentateuch: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Penta means 5. That's where we get a pentagram and the pentagon, first 5 books of the Bible. Okay, this is historical narrative. This is poetry. This is gospel. This is epistles, which are letters. So I learned it, in my opinion, a much better way. So somebody says, where's poetry in the Bible? Well, let me introduce you to this guy named Solomon. He's got a really cool erotic song over here, So when they've asked me as a pastor, hey, pastor, do you want to do sword drills? I'm like, do you really want me to do that? Because I'm like, Song of Solomon, come on, baby. We'll do that one.
So
those rosy breasts right there. Yeah. Breasts like mountains.
Yeah, that's quite a sword drill. I have to tell you, definitely in my Bible camp as a child, it was never Song of Solomon that was the reference being sent out for the kids.
Yeah, or then I would tell him to go find David, where he had the young girl sleeping on him. And
sure.
It,
those are the parts missing from the child conservative evangelical Bible camp experience.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, man, conservative evangelicals love to go, we need the Bible. I'm like, dude, that's rated R in some parts. You wouldn't let kids go to a movie if they saw that. Yeah, let's talk about Uriah and David, a little bit of adultery, a little bit of murder, sure.
Makes for good TV and movies maybe, but well, so I was curious. So actually that brings up some really interesting things. But before I get anywhere near that, I am curious, like, when you, after finding religion as an adult, like, when did you think you might want to become like an insane person and become a pastor? Because I can say that because I am one. So,
yeah, well, that's a story of itself. I don't get asked that one too much anymore because people are like, oh my God. I started out as a fundamentalist street preacher.
Okay.
I came to faith in very fundamentalist circles.
Okay.
So while I personally avoided the Satanic Panic of the 1980s, after I came to faith in the early 90s, I burnt all my D&D books. God have mercy on me.
Wow.
I burnt all my porn. Right. Probably not a bad idea there. And I burnt all my fantasy books because I was convinced that's what a good Christian should do. Right. Good Christians should give up anything that hinders them from God. At that point in my life, I didn't realize that those books had played an integral role in leading me to the point I was at. So early on, I was like many new young Christians. I was very excited about my faith. I still am excited about my faith. But it was a faith that I was taught you didn't question, you didn't doubt, right. You didn't have any despair. And so I just went whole hog, and I met some street preachers. They invited me to be a street preacher and do street ministry with them. I preached on college campuses.
You've got the voice for a street preacher, I think.
Yeah. Now I want to get out on the streets, and when I hear street preachers, I want to go, God loves you.
Right.
God loves everybody. Everybody's included.
Right.
You're all going to heaven.
Right.
Just to freak them out. So I did that. I was in a very fundamentalist tradition for a while, but thank God I was still a geek because I began to study. I made the mistake of reading these people called the early church fathers, who were all across the board on their theology. Mm-hmm. I began to read the early church creeds. I began to read Origin, which Origin will really
Right.
mess you up when you read some Origin.
Yep.
Read some Augustine, things of that nature. I began to study church history and the weave and the ebb and the flow of church history, its highs and its lows. But early on, I knew I wanted to be a minister. I knew that's what I needed to do. And I was on that fundamentalist, conservative evangelical journey for almost a decade. My wife, thank God, stayed with me through that. And eventually I just got to the point where I said, questioning is not a bad thing. I came years later, I came across the quote. I think it was Niebuhr who said it. The opposite of faith is not doubt, it's certainty.
Right.
And I began to realize that faith is a place of doubt, of questioning. Faith is meant to be about hope. It's not to be meant about certainty. I hope for tomorrow. Tomorrow's not certain. I just have a hope for it. And so, I sometimes feel like Amos. I'm not a prophet or a son of the prophets. I'm just some rando that showed up one day in the life of the church. And I've had my ups and downs. I've had my difficulties with it. But overall, it's been an interesting journey.
I mean, it certainly sounds like it. When you say survive the Satanic Panic, you mean you really mean because I could have been so I grew up, I was born in 83, right? So I grew up in the 80s and 90s, right? So, but really I'm in the 90s when I'm coming into a lot of the geek stuff that I'm when I'm first encountering, I mean, not the books you referenced, which I'm reading those pretty as young as I'm able to read, reading things like Chronicles of Narnia, things like that, which kind of gatewayed me into learning about fantasy, and so I started to get interested in D&D like games, like things like Hero Quest and things like that. But I was told similarly that, Christians don't get interested in that stuff, right? But right. I was at an age where by the time I became a teenager, I could get away with it. It wasn't that full on Satanic Panic, fervor against it. My parents were pretty much willing to trust that I could figure it out for myself by that point. But when I say I survived it, it's very different than you surviving it, which is burning your D&D books.
Yeah. For me, and you have to understand, the Satanic Panic was pretty much over by the time I burnt my books. I just felt like, whatever all right, I'm going to compare this to gaming, the way a Christian is. One of the things I've learned as I've introduced to many people to Dungeons and Dragons over the years, when I first introduce people to it, if they've got the money, they go out and buy every freaking thing they can buy. They go out and they buy the DMG, the player's handbook, the monster manual, the dice, maps, and this. They try and get as many resources. Or in the case of a lot nowadays, they go download it. They get as much information and they read about it. They want to learn it. When you get excited about something, that's what happens. And that's what happened to me. So I got excited about my faith early on in the journey. And so I was reading everything I could. I was listening to everybody I could get my hands on. And there was that, echo of, no, you're a Christian. You don't need this. This is a pathway to the occult. Obviously, it's occultic, this and that. And so I just said, I don't want to deal with those arguments. So I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff. And that happens in gaming. Even today, we have edition wars in gaming. You've got your 1E hardcore grognards. Yep. And when I saw Michael, talking about the beauties of OD&D, I know how Michael is. We have the things we love.
Right.
Now, what makes Michael and people like him different is he'll tell you flat out it's okay for you to love what you love.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, fundamentalism says you can only love what I love. And that is a form of cancel culture. We see this in the gaming community. You're only playing D&D if you play it my way. Right. It is a form of fundamentalism. It's the same thing in the church. You're only doing Christianity right if you do it my way. And so I jumped in whole hog at the end of it. So where the Satanic Panic comes up in the midst of all this, and I'm working on a documentary net right now about the Satanic Panic. For me, it was different because I think probably because we didn't go to church. My mom didn't have some sweet Southern preacher man getting up there telling her kid was going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
So when my mom got the flyers from a neighbor that said, this is the reason D&D is satanic, I walked into the house. I saw my books laid out on my bed. I said, what's the deal? And pardon my French, but my mom held it up. She said, don't worry about it. I was reading this bullshit. It's nothing but crap. And she threw it away.
Right.
Well, I picked it up.
Uh-huh.
I read it, and she was like, yeah, it told me to go to page here, and this was there, and page there, and this was there.
Wow, that's
it wasn't there. And so I give my mom a lot of credit for that. Right. My mom knew the game brought me a lot of joy, that I had fun playing. My mom always encouraged me to read. My mom always encouraged me to learn. And so I did not get the flack that some people during that period did. And one of the main reasons I don't think I caught that flack was because I wasn't in the church. Because the church, and this is what we're going to address in the documentary, is the church has a bad habit of doing witch trials. I equate the Satanic Panic to a modern day witch trial where you're killing people spiritually but not physically. We did the same thing when Harry Potter came out.
Right.
And I say we because I am a part of the Christian community. We did it when Harry Potter came out. We did it when Pokemon came out. They said the same things about Magic the Gathering.
Right.
I even remember hearing that about video games. I was a youth pastor at a church, a very conservative church. And we were going to, I was supposed to take the youth group to a skating rink. And my pastor said to me, he said, Derek, well, I told the kids, make sure you bring quarters for the video games. Because, back in the day, you had to actually pay for the video games. And so I said, bring quarters for the video game machines. And my pastor came up to me, an old country plowboy, and he said, now, Derek, we don't encourage our children to play them video games. And so I had to go to the roller skate arena and ask them to unplug all the video games. And I still remember that guy going, oh, a church group, right?
Yeah. Man.
He knew. He knew it was not uncommon for that to happen. And I'm over here. How in the world does playing asteroids lead people down a satanic path?
I was thinking, what game could possibly have been at that? You know what I mean? It could have been there at that rate. Like, what arcade game could possibly have been there that would have been a concern?
Now, here's
Pong,
the funny
Pong in the chat.
Funny part of the story. Yeah. About 3 years later, after I'd left that church, it was either 2 or 3 years later, came by his house to visit him, say hello. I said, hey, Brother Dan, how you doing? And his grandson was in there playing an NES on his TV.
Of course.
Grandchildren will make you rethink your theology.
They will. That's right. I was going to suggest that's a very charitable way to put it, because I was going to suggest that another struggle that we have is with hypocrisy. But
no. At this, I knew pastors who were hypocrites. Like I knew of pastors who told their congregations not to watch TV, because that was a big one in the 50s and 60s. Don't watch TV. And it even lasted into the 70s and 80s. And they would have a TV in their own home that they had to hide in the closet when parishioners came over.
Yeah.
But Dan wasn't that way. I give Dan credit for, he continued to grow as he got older. So, and that is the key to a life of faith.
Sure.
Will faith grow and evolve, or will it stagnate?
Right. Well, so one of the things I was hoping we could talk about is something you like to talk about, which is inclusion at the gaming table, inclusion at, of LGBTQIA people, inclusion of neurodiversity. And like, it strikes me that, there's a connection between inclusion at the gaming table and inclusion at the Lord's table. So I was hoping you might be willing to talk a little bit with us about that.
Oh my goodness, I could preach a whole sermon about that.
Yeah.
Oh, one of the things, there is a theology that many Christians have, and it's called fencing the table. What fencing the table basically means, for any of your viewers who don't know, is fencing the table means that you keep people away from the table who are not a part of your tribe. So if you go to a particular church and they are serving Eucharist or Holy Communion or the Lord's Supper or the Lord's table, whatever term you use, if you go to that church and you are not a part of that church, sometimes if you're not even a part of that local church, you are not allowed to receive Holy Communion. That's fencing the table. Now, the thing is, fencing the table is not always a bad thing. Early Christians had to fence their tables because they were afraid of dying. That's not a problem for us today, in America especially. Christians are not being persecuted in America. That's a BS statement people make. In the early days of geekdom, we fenced our tables. Some of us fenced our tables because we were afraid of getting beat up. Some of us fenced our gaming tables because we were afraid of being made fun of. Some of us fenced our tables because we just wanted to have a private conversation about geeky things without someone else interrupting. That was not a bad thing. We live in what I refer to now as a post-geek culture. By that, the geeks have inherited the earth. Just look at what Marvel movies bring in. Look at the first Spider-Man trilogy, what the money it brought in. You look at our TV, man, it's nothing but fantasy and fiction. Now that we are mainstream, just like you and I are both what are referred to as mainline Christians, we're both in the mainline, we do not fence our tables. The only way we fence our table a lot of times is we say, all are invited who love the Lord Jesus Christ and want to know him better. Sometimes that's my invitation to the table. All who love playing the game and want to enjoy each other's company are welcome at my table. If you don't enjoy someone else's company, you're not included. And that company means you need to enjoy the company of LGBTQI folks. You need to enjoy the company of neurodiverse people. You need to enjoy the company of men and women and trans folks or whatever gender identity they choose. This is an open table, but even that open table is fenced. And there's a quote, I forget who said this, but you might know, the only thing I will not tolerate is intolerance. Oh, sure. So while I advocate for a diverse table, and I advocate for diverse conversations, a diverse Lord's table, a diverse gaming table, everyone is welcome. But if you're coming there to start trouble, no trolls allowed, and I hate to say that because I freaking love trolls. I love trolls. Trolls are great protagonists in a game. I mean, I don't want my trolls to be evil. I often make my trolls neutral. I've even had neutral good trolls in there. I've even thought about introducing half trolls into a game, because I don't think any race should be inherently evil in a game. That said, we have to be careful, but we also need to be inclusive. The geek community has, like the church, done damage. The church has done damage to people of color. I've seen that over the course of my life. I'm a Southern man. I've seen what churches do. I've been in churches that are the most segregated place on Sunday. I've also served multiracial churches. I'm currently serving a multiracial church now. But I've still experienced racism in my current context. I see that. I've seen the gaming community exclude people of color and voices of color. I've seen the church exclude LGBTQIA folks from the life and the ministry of the church. I disagree with that. I have seen the gaming community exclude LGBTQIA folks. And these are things, to use an old Christian term, we need to repent of, both in the geek community and in the church. Our doors should be welcome to all, because at the end of the day, my faith is defined by two things: love God, love other people. That's it. If somebody said, Derek, sum up your faith in 4 words, love God, well, 5 words, love God, love other people. My son was taking social studies online, secular school, and they were going over their chapter on Christianity. And I said, son, my son's autistic. I said, if you don't remember anything I've ever preached, just remember this: love God, love other people, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from. And that's what inclusion at the table is about. It's about being loving. It's about being caring. It's about being accepting people for who they are. And unfortunately, both communities, which I love and identify with, have not always done a good job of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of, I noticed we were exchanging emails earlier that in your email signature, you had a verse from 1 John, and the lectionary has been going through 1 John this year during the Easter season. So I've been really praying over and meditating a lot over the beauty of some of those verses in 1 John, but the idea of like, we are God's children now. What we have been has not yet been revealed, which is like, or what we will be has not yet been revealed, is what I mean to say. And I think about that a lot, that concept a lot. It really sticks with me. This idea of like what we will be hasn't yet been revealed, because like you said earlier on, we are all on this journey, right? Like we're all on this journey. And I like to think of my own theology, which sometimes on this show it comes out, but now I try not to make it a sledgehammer. In my own theology, I like to think of the journey to God as being one that will be forever, that we will forever, that there's not like a stopping point when we die and then we're either in or we're out. But like it's a forever journey, further up and further into God, into deeper and deeper mysteries, and
us there, I
yeah, right. Yeah, deeper and deeper mysteries, and I, so what I think, like the idea that then, so I think that for me as a Christian, my Christian theology is one that it's like the idea of fencing somebody or the idea of not including somebody is like saying, okay, these aspects of God, which will be revealed to us, communicated to us in one another. I don't want to learn that thing about God that is going to be revealed to me in you, like in your face. Like I don't want to, and like the idea that we would ever do that as Christians is doesn't make theological sense to me. But then I do think that same idea applies in the gaming world, because we have, I think, now seen, as the gaming world has become more and more diverse, how much richness of human experience there is at the table when people can be themselves and when we don't keep people out. And so when inclusion is not just considered but celebrated and lifted up, that only improves everyone. That just makes the gaming world so much better. I mean, there's the moral part of it, then there's also just like the richness that we gain from being everyone together and being able to kind of come together and to learn about the human experience from, God forbid, people who are not like me.
Yeah, that's the key is learning, as you said, learning about the human experience from other people. My Hindu friends, I think, get it right. I believe it's namaste, that my spirit recognizes the spirit within you. And my Anglican brothers and sisters, in their liturgy, the Lord be with you and with thy spirit. Or in my tradition, we use the elder one, the Lord be with you and also with you. But I like that, and be with thy spirit, because we are saying the spirit within you recognizes the spirit within me, and the spirit within me recognizes the spirit within you. And that is our connection as human beings, that we are all creatures of the same divine being. And even when I talk with my atheist friends who say, well, I don't believe any of that, Derek, how do I find the connection? I just quote Carl Sagan, we're all stardust. And so that I recognize the stardust within you, hopefully you'll recognize the stardust within me. And because we all come from the same source, we all need to get along and care for each other. That is the thing that I love about both the geek community and a good community of faith. It's a communal experience. It's not meant to be done alone. I have tried to play choose your own adventures by myself. I don't like it. It's no fun. In the long, yeah, I'll get a few minutes of joy out of it, but it's not really there. That's the same way it is about practicing my faith. I don't like doing it alone because I'm not going to say the word I'm thinking of. Yes, I will, because I'm that horrible. It's masturbatory. It is, and it's a lot. It's like sex. It's a lot more fun when somebody else joins in.
Now that being said, I will say that there's a lot of people who like doing like solo adventure RPGs, and there's a bunch of solo games that are out there, which I think are great. But it's worth saying those are also not like in a vacuum, right? Like you're still not an island, because you still are, like, in all likelihood, playing a game someone else created, and you're sharing in their creation with them, even if you're playing it by yourself.
It's funny you say that, because I have a lot of friends that do solo RPGs. And they will play through it, the video game ones.
Oh, sure.
And they will play through it, and they will play through it. And I do that too. And I have yet to have a friend over the years who said, I can't wait till they add the multiplayer option.
Sure.
Playing a solo RPG is perfectly fine. Playing games by yourself is perfectly fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you also want to find that time to play with other people. And the reason being is because other people are chaos incarnate, and they will throw something at you that you never expected. And that's the fun part of it. I tell people I like to play a game with other people because as a DM, I love seeing the horror on their face when the monster comes out. Sure. I love that. If I'm doing a solo adventure, I can't see the horror on their faces. The other thing is, as a player, I like playing with other people in a game because other people will spark my imagination and will feed off of each other.
Yes.
There's something about that. Now, I'm not saying that all has to be face-to-face. As I mentioned earlier, my son's on the autism spectrum. He doesn't always like being around other people face-to-face. He loves communicating with people online. And that's something old gamers like me need to recognize, that online gaming is a real, true gaming experience. And one of the projects I'm going to be working on over the next year is talking to people of faith about how an online faith experience is a real thing. It is not artificial. For too long, we have told people that online connections, the church has told people online connections are not real connections. And that's bogus. I don't care if somebody's using an alt account. I don't care if somebody is using an alias or they're anonymous. I still know that when I talk with them or have a conversation with them, I am conversing with a real person. Some people say, how do you know you're not talking with an AI? And I always say an AI could spell better than that.
But yeah, I mean, we really did in a lot of ways. So not all churches, I should say, but a lot of churches, and a lot of them in my tradition for sure, we really, I think, shot ourselves in the foot, of course, with not knowing that a global pandemic would happen in 2020, and that online space where all of us lived for church and for religious experience for a year plus. And but I hope we've learned a lot from it, from having to do it, because I hope we've learned so that we change going forward.
It has forced a lot of churches. This pandemic has forced a lot of churches to actually finally enter the 20th century. Oh, right. Wait.
Right.
Where I'm at, it was, I had only been here where I'm at locally for 7 months when the pandemic hit. I was going to wait for a year to a year and a half to get this church to move online, because they had no online. They had a few online sites they didn't use. They had a Facebook page they didn't use. They had a YouTube page they didn't really use. And when the pandemic hit, we had to just do it. And we jumped in. I was very fortunate. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. One of our church members, he works... He's he works with bands, because Nashville's a big music city. In fact, we call ourselves Music City. And so he came in, he was out of work. He came in and just really got us online and got us there. And we were able to get a presence online. And the thing is, and I'm going to tell you one of the greatest experiences I had during this time was when I had one of my older members call me up and say, Derek, I'm watching the church service on Facebook. Now, was a high-risk individual, high risk. Her sister called her up and said, my church doesn't have Facebook. I can't get online. What can I do? And she said she turned the volume up, put her sister on speakerphone. This is a 70-something-year-old woman. And said this was the first time they'd actually been able to be at church together for years.
Wow.
Because now they're watching it together, but they're also listening to it together. And how virtual can you get? She's using a cell phone so her sister can hear the service streaming while she's watching it, and she can talk to her sister about it.
Right.
And that was just a beautiful, amazing experience.
Right.
And the church needs to adopt this, just like the old school grognards need to adopt virtual gaming. At the very least, if you're not great at the digital stuff, get a Zoom call together and do it that way.
Hey, I even have people in my generation who are, grew up on the internet and are gamers and will not play role-playing games online. They won't. There's no interest. Like people who I've games with, and I'm like, okay, but the reality is you're missing out. Like tremendously, really, because I get it. Not everyone's cup of tea to play role-playing games online. Okay, whatever, I get it. But like to not even try it, because like some of the most fun and like fun experiences I've had playing role-playing games have been in groups online, and it does open up this whole world that you were saying church does too, which is like I can play games online with people who I never get to sit at a table with because they live across the world, because they live across the country, because I can't connect with them anymore because we've grown up and moved away. That kind of stuff, and we're getting some good. This is obviously touching some people because we get some good comments in the chat.
I love the Colwich's comment because Colwich said played more in the last year than the last 5 years combined.
Right.
I can't disagree with that because here's the thing. I normally would, because I do a lot of convention scenes. I preach probably 50 to 51 weeks out of the year.
Yeah.
I don't get a chance to do a lot of face-to-face gaming. I haven't been able to. I'm also an itinerant minister. The United Methodist Church moves us around, so keeping a steady gaming group was hard. When the pandemic hit, so I would normally only play D&D 3 or 4 times a year, and it was usually me running a game at a gaming convention. I have played Dungeons and Dragons more during this pandemic than I would say in the last 10 years. And I'm known for running games at conventions because I don't get to game that much.
Yeah.
And talking about the connections, this is what's so amazing. Our daughter graduated college in the midst of this pandemic. I told her, I said, honey, I'm thinking about running a game. She moved back in home after college because at 21 years old, you could not afford to live on your own in the midst of this pandemic.
Right.
It's hard to find a job, things like that.
Yeah.
We told her, move back in with us. That's fine. You're welcome here until you get on your feet. We're a really close family. And I said, I'm thinking about running a game, but I'm not sure. I don't want to put out a general call because people know me. I'd get flooded with requests. I would, have to weed people out, and that would tick some folks off. And that's a lot of work. She said, well, how about some of the people from my D&D group back in college? So her DM now plays in my game. I have 3 Gen Zers playing in my game. Her roommate from college, her DM, and my daughter play in my game. And then I have a doctor close to my age that lives up north playing in my game. And it's actually one of the more diverse games I play because I have a wide range of folks that play in my game. Gender ranges, or, I have more females playing in my game than when I run a game at a convention. Because when you go to conventions, sadly, it's still primarily a white male hobby. But in this online game, I have so much more diversity, which is so fun because I get to hear all kinds of different ideas. And then the best compliment I've gotten, and I think I shared this with some other folks the other day, the best compliment I've got was my daughter still plays in an online game with her DM. And she said, "Hey, Dad, guess what?" I said, "What's that?" She said, "My DM is using some of your DM techniques." I was like, yes, I am teaching Gen Z. Michael Mornard will like that. I am teaching Gen Z to run D&D in the old school way.
The old school way. That's so
Which
funny.
basically means do it on the fly.
So let me ask you a question. In your private game, what edition of D&D do you guys play?
5e.
5e. There you go.
5e. And the reason's very simple. We play 5e because that's what my daughter and her friends know.
Sure.
My friend who's closer to my age, she did not come into D&D until later in life. So she started with 4e, and she really loved 4e. I did not like 4e. It was not my cup of tea. I'm not going to shame people who do like it.
Sure.
But 4e, I've run every version of D&D except OD&D. I've run every version of D&D. But I really just did not care for 4e, but my friend loves it. Well, since the majority of the people played 5e, I had played 5e. I'd even run a little 5e. I made it a 5e game. Now, if you want to know what game I prefer, what rule set I prefer, there's two of them. One is called Old School Essentials, which is basically a retro clone of the Tom Moldvay box set from the 1980s. I like it. Gene Mornard said I need to complete the set. But she threw me off there for a second. But I like Old School Essentials because it's a retro clone and it's very freeform. There's not a lot of heavy duty rules. You don't have to worry about having special abilities. I mean, in the game I play in a 5e game with some friends right now. I've got a 12th level bard, man. I'm still trying to figure out, well, he's a 10th level bard, 2nd level sorcerer, I believe.
Okay.
And I'm trying to factor in all those abilities, burning sorcery points, doing this. I have all of this stuff. That becomes difficult to keep track of, even when you know the game well. So Old School Essentials lets me be freeform. Another game I like, it was made off of the D20 engine for 3rd edition. It's called Castles and Crusades.
Mm-hmm.
And it's put out by my friends at Troll Lord Games. And the trolls are really great. It is very rules light. I like it because you can do whatever you want to try and do within reason, and you can make it even tells you how to make difficulty classes on the fly.
Okay. Wow.
Difficulty check. So for example, your base difficulty check's always going to be a 10. On a D20, you roll a 10 or higher. So, all right, hey, I want to walk across the bridge, but it's a little slippery. Just give me a D10, a D20, and you just need a 10 to succeed. Oh, it's more than slippery. There's some holes in it. Well, we're going to go up to to 12. Use your dex bonus. You just add your dex bonus in. Very simple. Oh, wait, I want to somersault off the balcony down to the king and try a backstab. Now, in D&D, you'd have to do an athletics check and add it to an attack roll,
Sure.
Things like that. What I would say is, wait a second. All right, you're a fighter in full plate mail. That DC is going to be 25 for you. And I can make that on the fly. My rogue says they want to do the same thing. I say, okay, you're wearing light armor. You're a rogue. Obviously, your class teaches you things like that. Your DC, to make the jump and to land in a fighting stance is just going to be a 20. You roll it. You don't have to worry about skill points, allocating anything like that. You just need a total of 20. Give me your dex bonus to that, plus your class level. So you're a 4th level rogue. You got a +2 on dex, you're going to need to roll a 14. You can do that in your freaking head.
Right. Reminds me a lot of the way Cypher System handles difficulty classes.
Very much so.
Which
Cypher System stole it. Cypher System.
There you go.
Cypher System's a good system. I watched some of your videos. I loved you talking about Dungeon World.
Sure.
You know, I love things like that. You know, I may be an older gamer, but I'm not as old as Michael Mornard.
He mentioned that, I think it was last week on the show. He did kind of, he was said something about you being younger than him, which I thought was really entertaining.
Hey, man, I'm just 50, dude. I'm just 50. So, you know.
We won't talk about Michael's age. We're going to get in trouble. Okay.
I tease him all the time. Michael knows I love him.
He said nobody's as old as I am.
Michael knows I love him, but you know who the best person in the world is? Jean Mornard.
You're telling me. I know.
She's a saint because she married Michael.
There you go. No, Jean's awesome, and I was very blessed to be in seminary with both of them and graduate with them at General Theological Seminary.
Man, I know you had a great time with them.
We had a great time in class, yeah. Well, so I really am appreciative of your time on a Friday, and that you're not playing D&D and you're talking to us. I really appreciate that. That's like, there's no bigger statement in the world to me than that. That is.
Yeah. Hey, man. Yeah, I mean. I'll be very honest, though. One of the reasons is, so I have to do an insert for my campaign because I'm trying to end it up really quick. My players have to make it to the Dreamlands to free a god.
Okay.
From the Dreamlands. And I don't have everything prepared for them yet. And so that's the other reason.
I have been in that boat myself many times. And in fact, actually, many times I've been like, what's my out for this week? Because I am not ready, and I'm not ready to admit that. I've been.
So, and it's such a big campaign ender.
Sure.
The idea is I really want to end it because Ravenloft is about to come out.
Right. I know.
And what I am hoping to do, and this might be an invitation to you, it might not be.
Okay.
We don't know.
Okay.
But what I am hoping to do is run a campaign in Ravenloft. I want to call it the Redemption of Ravenloft. And try and get some real life clergy to play in the game on a regular basis as we journey through Ravenloft and watch as the clergy people get slowly corrupted by the world of Ravenloft.
That sounds great. I've also many times thought that a clergy stream, a game stream, would be a really fun thing to do sometime, even as a one-off, because I haven't done that, and I really feel like it's something that needs to happen sometime.
Preachers is crazy. Preachers. You've got to be. I'm telling you, one of my district superintendents, before I began the process in the UMC, told me. She said, anybody who goes into ministry, when they take the psychologicals, they have to show up as a little bit psychotic on the chart.
That's what I was saying before. Become insane and decide to go into full-time ministry. Well, on that note, I want to. I'm gonna ask you. Can you stick around so I can say goodbye to you off air as soon as this is over?
Sure. I do want to plug.
Yeah, please. I was gonna ask you to plug. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I am working on a documentary on the Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
And Christians who lived through that and the responses. I am going to be interviewing people who worked for TSR in the 1980s, people of faith, and how they felt when they were attacked by both the media and churches of which they were a part.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm going to be talking to them about this. My first interview is scheduled Monday. Thankfully, we don't have to do a Kickstarter. It's the same people that did the Fantasy Makers documentary, the Science Fiction Makers documentary. But part of what I'm going to be doing over the next year is taking family leave. And I'm going to be putting updates on my Patreon. So if people want to support my Patreon, just look for patreon.com, the Geek Preacher. And I will be doing some behind the scenes footage. I'm going to be interviewing one of the great artists of all time, Larry Elmore is my first interview, the guy behind the Dragonlance artwork and the Red Box D&D set. Awesome. And so I'm going to be, we're actually both vaccinated, so I get to see my friend Larry in person.
That's awesome.
In 2 years.
Very exciting.
So,
wow, that's awesome. So
if
yeah,
anybody wants to support that, that'd be great, because my wife says I still have to pay the bills even though I'm going on family leave.
there you go. You do. Yeah. Who knew?
You know,
So that's a call to everybody. Go to Patreon. What did you say it was? Patreon.com/The
Geek Preacher.
Geek Preacher.
Patreon.com/The Geek Preacher.
When I put this on YouTube, I'll make sure I put it in the show notes for that.
Sure that's the right address, but I'm going to look it up real quick.
Make sure, or at least give it to me, and I'll put it in the show notes afterward. So
let's double check here.
Yeah, please.
Yep, that's me.
Great.
Oh, and one of the things you will like, on my, I put a picture of my inclusive table. It has the C.S. Lewis Bible. It has a Faygo for communion. It has Doritos and the player's handbook and some graph paper. So, that's my idea of a really, I'm a sacramentalist like you. I'm very much a high person on the sacraments. So I just love the idea of Jesus being present in grape Faygo and Doritos.
No, stop it! You're gonna give this Episcopalian a heart attack. That's the.
You liked it. You liked it. Dude, hey, when you have a good Dorito or a good soda or a good drink, don't you go, "Thank you, Jesus"?
It's true. It's true. Well, everybody, I just want to say thanks one more time to Derek White. Thank you, Derek, for being on the show. Stick around for a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Sure.
We're gonna say goodbye to Derek, to our viewers here, just by the power of the internet. The only housekeeping thing I want to say at the end is, please do me a huge favor. Definitely go to Derek's Patreon, without a doubt. Learn more about the documentary, support him there. Also, if you just do me a little tiny favor, it's the tiniest thing you can do. Just hit that follow button here on my Twitch channel, because it's going to help me a lot by helping me get closer to affiliate here on Twitch, which I'm hoping to be able to do. And then you can check out this show. You can check it out after the fact. I mean, you're already watching it, but check it out at allportsopen.com, where you can see all of the videos in this series, both live when they're happening and after the fact there on allportsopen.com. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget, May 28th is our next episode. I'll be joined by James D'Amato, the co-founder the founder of the One Shot Network and host of One Shot and many other things. So thanks for watching and have a great weekend.
You